Great, there we go. As y'all can imagine, Relying on Neighbors is going to be a panel about mentorship, sponsorship, relationships. And something that came up during one of the breaks earlier, and I'm going to steal this from Leslie. In her role as a CHRO, she is advising people now in this world of AI generating resumes, AI reading resumes, AI doing so much for us, that human connection has re-emerged of critical importance. You know, I think for a while we were maybe not going to events because you could connect with people on LinkedIn, maybe not prioritizing that face-to-face as much because there was so much else going on. We're back, I would say, in that face-to-face world, that relationship-driven world. For anyone entering the workforce today, I would say absolutely get out there, be meeting people, be talking to people. And that's the through line that carries us, I think, through all of our careers. And that's what we're going to talk about today. It is, you know, power transfer is a metaphor for being our best and trying to transmit that best to everybody around us. So this last panel is going to be a call to action. Hopefully you'll hear it and you'll think about the areas where you can sponsor, you can mentor, you can continually find people to be role models for you and maybe get some extra advice and techniques from our experts today. So Mel, I'm going to hand it over to y'all.
Thanks, Joanna. Thanks everybody for being here. And I think we're the last panel of the day, so we're going to keep it active and spicy and encourage you to participate as well. We'll have a couple of polls to get us started in a bit. My name is Mèlika Carroll, and I'm head of corporate affairs for Cohere. Cohere is an enterprise AI company. What that means is we build technology similar to what ChatGPT is, but for businesses only. And I'm also very, very lucky, thanks to Chris's outreach, to be one of the independent board members for RF. I'm super happy to be here with you today. And this is a topic I'm very, very passionate about, networking and mentorships, something that's been really important to my career, to grow my career, but also to give back. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce each other, themselves, I'm sorry. No trick there. And then in your introduction, can you talk a little bit about what this showing up for your neighbors means for you? I'll hand it over to you, Sara.
Certainly. I'm Sara Patrick, President and CEO of Midwest Reliability Organization, or MRO. MRO is one of the regions similar to RF. We're sisters. As far as relying on your neighbors, I think from a networking and mentoring perspective, that really means that you don't have to have all of the answers, and you don't have to have the best answers, but you have to recognize that there is a great deal of expertise and depth of experience, and bringing in diverse perspectives to help you as you grow in your career and as you make those decisions. When we bring people together and rely on our neighbors, and from the ERO enterprise perspective, that's not just your own organization, but that's your cohorts across the enterprise, because the level of expertise and experience across the ERO enterprise is really unparalleled.
Hi, my name is Holly Hawkins. Can you hear me? I'm the general counsel of SERC Reliability Corporation, so another sister company, one of the regional entities. Last night I was introduced as the Nikki of the South. Come on, guys. No one can ever be Nikki, but I will take it as a compliment. And I think relying on neighbors for me means it. Sara hit on it, but I'll add just a little color. One thing I always say to lawyers on my team, I worked at NERC for some years before I came to SERC, is we don't know everything. We don't have all of the answers, especially lawyers. This is a tough business. It's very technical. And if we don't rely on our engineering friends and others in the business, we can't do our job. So, and we often do that by calling our peers in the industry or across regions. So that's relying on neighbors for me.
Bluma Sussman, Vice President of Stakeholder Engagement at the Electricity EISAC, and we work to bring together electricity sector stakeholders to increase resilience and reduce risk to the bulk power system. I've been with the Electricity EISAC for about 8 years, and maybe just a little bit about my career very briefly, because it's a little less traditional than maybe some in the room. I started out in television in the 2000 elections, which were pretty tumultuous, reporting on the news. news. And then after that, I found myself right after 9/11 wanting to do more than report the news, but be a part of the solution from a communications perspective. So that brought me to DC, and I worked at the State Department there, which was absolutely impactful in shaping my trajectory for the rest of my career. And then that brought me to consulting for the federal space and federal agencies to advise them on national security issues. And at home, I am mom. I have 3 teenagers, a 19, 16, and 13-year-old. So maybe something that some of you can relate to. The oldest is in college now. And it is a pleasure to be here with all of you today. So relying on neighbors is all about community, and you'll hear me talk a little bit more about what community means throughout, but I think that we are stronger when we come together. It takes a village. It takes a village personally, it takes a village professionally, and it's really about creating that network, that community of people around you who lift you up and who support you no matter what you're doing.
Thank you so much. So we're going to ask the group, the audience, a couple of questions here in our first poll. If you want to pull up the Slido, yep. Is how many of you have had a mentor who changed your career trajectory? Love to see some feedback on that. And maybe while we're waiting for an answer, can somebody maybe talk a little bit about a mentor that changed your career trajectory? Anybody? No?
Certainly. So I really want to talk more about networking and mentoring, or the folks that when you cast a wide web to bring folks into your network. The things that one of the things I wanted to share was think very broadly about how you make these connections. One of the things that I found is that opportunities arise when you least expect them, and they come from all directions in your life, not just your professional contacts. So just recently had, in the last, I guess it's been almost 3 years now, but had a neighbor reach out to me and say, you know, I have a friend who's a president of a bank, and you know, they're looking for independent directors that have some enterprise-wide risk and cybersecurity expertise. Is that anything you might be interested in? And, you know, this is somebody that I sort of tangentially know, but not very well. And that all played out really well for me, and that I now sit on that bank board. So that was one of those opportunities that arose organically that I was not expecting.
That's a great point. So mentors and your network can be beyond what you're immediately thinking about, sort of if you're thinking about your next career move, for example. And we see here on the screen, a lot of folks have mentors, somewhat of a mentor, and no, but still a good portion of people who don't have mentors. So, but we do see that it's important. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then the next question we have here for the group is, who has mentored someone else? If we can get a show of hands. Have you all mentored someone else? Yes? Yes? Nikki, yes. Great. Let's see. Wow. There we go. There we go. 100%. So I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think maybe more people have mentors than are mentoring. So that's an important thing to know, right? Putting yourself out there to offer mentorship as well. Maybe we'll do one last question and start. We're talking about 2 things here, mentoring and networking. So last question is going to be on networking. Oh, is this the same one? A little different. Well, actually, let's just do a show of hands. Who likes to network? Who likes to go to an event and start to meet strangers? Wow, I'm impressed. That's awesome. I hate it. It's a hard thing for me to do anyways, for some people to do.
That's why they're all here.
But I think the point is, you know, you have either been mentored or mentoring. It's not everybody has that opportunity though, and that's what we want to try to develop here. And also the importance, we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of networking. And I guess one thing that has struck me with the conversation today and led me to start working on this sort of as a side project several years ago was that we network differently. Women generally network a little bit differently. And it really struck me, this is almost 20 years ago, I was at an industry group event, and I've been in the technology and political business for my whole career, also very male-dominated careers. And I overheard a group of my colleagues, they were all happened to be men, talking about last night's poker game. And the result of that poker game was a conversation about job opportunities that they were talking and sharing with each other. It was about professional information that was helpful to advance in their career or their project, whatever they were working on. I'm like, poker game? I'm like, wow, like last night I ran home, stopped at the grocery store to grab something I forgot, to make dinner, to feed the kids, to then convince the kids to, get into bed or whatever. That would have never occurred to me. And I guess one of the things I want to challenge you to take away from today is to think about how these things are different for you and how you want to do them your way. The result of all of this was I partnered with a friend of mine to start a group called Global Women's Innovation Network. And it's now 16 years old. It's got $4 million in the bank. And it's a group to help other women just advance in our careers. And we program the stuff differently, different times of the day, different types of programming, because we show up differently. And I'm hoping you're going to hear that with the questions today about the different ways that we network or that happen to happen, right? And that we mentor each other. So I'll start with one first question. Bluma and Sara, actually. Networking often happens in unexpected places. You talked a little bit about that. What's one relationship, maybe with Sara, that started informally but became professionally transformative for you?
Sure.
And Bluma.
So I shared about the bank opportunity, but even coming to MRO. So actually this week is my 8th anniversary as president and CEO. I was named interim president and CEO at the end of February in 2018. And I will say that the first 2 years, the 4 months that I was interim, I didn't count that. Because I was really milking, I'm new at this. But now that I've been in this role for 8 years, I'm counting it. But I came to MRO. I was actually very happy. I was working for a data broker. I'm an attorney by trade, and I was doing privacy law and really enjoying myself. And our former controller had left the organization, and she ended up at MRO, and she called me and said, "We need a lawyer, send me a resume." And I said, I'm not looking for a job, which is the best time to find one. So the third time she called me, I said, "Okay, here's my resume, but what do you do?" And she couldn't tell me. This was back in 2008, and she was a finance person, and I couldn't figure out anything online. I mean, I seriously went blind into that interview. I was there for 6 hours. Yeah, it was a long day. And I left going, wow, this would be such a great opportunity because it's a whole new body of law. Like there's no precedent. And MRO is what we call a cross-border region, operates in the US and Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And I'm like, I get to influence international policy. This is amazing. And the rest is history. I've been now with the organization 18 years. And it was somebody I had worked with who I didn't really even know all that well. But, I had demonstrated some competence, apparently. And she reached out, and here we are.
Bluma.
I love this question. And you talked about the poker nights, and that's totally where my head went. And I have tried everything. I have played golf in tournaments with the guys, the only lady in a 4. I've been to the pool club and talked to people there. But what I will say is that when I thought about this, the number one place that I have made absolutely transformational relationships when it comes to professional development is on the soccer sidelines, because VP is not my only title. I'm also a soccer mom. And when I moved to the Bethesda area outside of DC, I was so blessed. There was a community of women sitting on the soccer sideline with me, cheering on their kids. And they were executives in aviation, in hospitality, in biotech. And I was not the only mom who was traveling for work. And for those of you who have young children, when I started traveling, my oldest, who's now 19, was maybe 4 years old, and I made him a book, and it was called Mommy's Going on a Business Trip. And it had pictures of airplanes and it had pictures of sea lions because I was going out to Sacramento. And the little boy, you know, he made it, my husband read it to him every night. But the point is that there was some amount of mom guilt that I was feeling about leaving my young children behind. And when I made these connections on the sidelines, I know people think they don't want to talk about work when they're out there in Saturday soccer, but I will tell you, just asking somebody, what do you do? You know, there's camaraderie, there's confirmation, there's validation. And what I realized is that we were not just these soccer moms on the sidelines. We were actually changing the narrative. We were shifting things. Growing up, there were not moms who were traveling for work. And my mom even worked full time and she did not travel for work. So the fact that we were sitting here changing the narrative, building a new culture, new norms for our families was really a absolutely transformational moment. And I would encourage everyone, just talk to people wherever you are, find out what they do and see how it really, you never know what will be transformational for you in those conversations.
That's a very good point. The networking is not just about your next career move, it's about partnership as well, right? And we talked about that with the doctor this morning. It's feeling connection and networking with other people who to share life experiences with, right? 100%. What are some of the ways senior leaders can help emerging women leaders rise? How do you think this power transfer happens in mentorship and succession planning? Sara?
So we've talked a lot about networking and mentoring, but I also want to say there's sponsorship and there's cheerleaders. And my two biggest cheerleaders happen to be in the room. So my cousin Elizabeth and my sister Tara are here with us. And as we were talking last night about this question, Elizabeth reminded me of a story, a situation that I wanted to share. So I'm going to start with a story about power transfer, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we get there. So she reminded me, she and I were together, it was probably a year or so ago. And in my organization, when there is a hiring decision, or when somebody wants to hire somebody, I always meet with the candidate first. And this was a position we were hiring, was a director level position, reporting to one of my executive team members. And we had actually a fantastic candidate. After that interview, I was like, when are we making the offer? And my hiring manager, executive, said, well, I have one more candidate that I want to talk to. And by the end of the week, we'll have a decision. I said, okay. But then I was going out of town. And they had that interview with the second candidate. And she called me and said, okay, this is what I want to do. We have a time crunch because the first candidate now has an offer, and I want to hire the second candidate, but I don't want to tell her until he accepts. So we had this time crunch, and I said, okay, well, whatever you do, I know you'll make a great decision. And that was the power transfer. And my cousin was like, what? You're going to let them decide? I'm like, well, she's the hiring manager and we already had a fantastic candidate. So if she thinks this one's even better, her decision. And I didn't know until I got back to Minnesota where I live what the decision was. And my cousin was like itchy all weekend. I can't believe you do like this. And she said, that's the power transfer. It wasn't a delegation of authority. It was, hey, it's your decision. And I have all the confidence that you're going to make the right one. So how do we get there? Yeah. One of the things that we can do as with our emerging leaders and even those of us who are more senior leaders is go or gather where the influencers are. So industry associations or networking groups, women's leadership groups, identify one or two, don't join them all, but find the ones that speak to you and participate, show up, become known amongst that group, because those networks are important and they come when you least expect them, or the opportunities come when you might not be expecting them, as I've shared. So that's one way. Another way is as senior leaders and those who are emerging, develop your competence. And as senior leaders, we can provide those opportunities for folks to work on technically challenging assignments or assignments that have a lot of visibility within the organization. When you see people who really are deserving of that kind of recognition and that kind of opportunity, we can make that happen, and we should be making that happen. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and this was talked about quite a bit actually in the last panel, was developing resilience and what I call identity confidence, because you need to manage the expectation that You will occasionally encounter bias. You will, hopefully occasionally, but some of us quite regularly will be the only woman in the room. And your ideas and your expertise may be more rigorously questioned than others. And we as senior leaders can help coach folks through that and recognize through our own experiences that, that's a reality. But I do want to share that it isn't something that should define you. It shouldn't be something that you wallow in, that just recognize it exists and it's not about you. And just bring your best self to the conversation and rise above it, because that is how we succeed. And we can help one another by raising each other up. So those are, I think, some actionable things that you can think about as wherever you are in your organization, as an emerging leader or as an established leader.
I think on that power transfer, one thing that's really interesting in what you described about giving your team member the power, right? Literally, you said, this is your decision, is if you're trying to grow in your career, I really try to encourage my team to ask for those moments. I might not see them. I might say, they're coming to me, do you want to make the final decision on this candidate, or tell me what you think about this candidate? And I will have an opinion. But it's important, I think, to give the space to our teams to feel comfortable to make those decisions. And if it ends up being the wrong one, it's okay. Mistakes happen. Sometimes we hire the wrong people or whatever. The project didn't go the right way. But I think not just as a leader making the space for those decisions, but as you want to grow in your career, asking for the space to make the decision is really important as well. So maybe moving on, Bluma, we'll come back to you. When we think about networking in the modern working environment where a lot of people are remote in different offices around the country, we've got regional organizations with broad scope. How does that networking changed with this virtual component, with social media and everything else? How do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two pieces to this question. One is about networking in a remote environment, and one's a little bit about the social media. So I'm going to take them a little bit separately here. So first and foremost, we've all made it through 5-6 years of pandemic, post-pandemic life, and networking has changed. There are so many opportunities to meet other people virtually, and those are excellent. It allows us to keep our budgets down. It allows us to participate more while still balancing workloads and other commitments. And those are really excellent. So I would encourage you to take advantage of it. But we're also seeing the need to have human connections. And the whole day today, we've been talking about relationships and connections and community. And so really, when it comes down to it, there are events like this are not to be missed. And so really, you should all be applauding yourselves in a remote sort of hybrid environment for taking the time and recognizing that being here in person is really a wonderful balance to all of the remote networking opportunities that are out there. The second part of your question was about building a social media brand. And there's a lot of influencers out there, but what I want to talk about is not being an influencer, but it's about social media as a form of representation. And Sara, you touched on this a little bit before, but like so many of you, I also came up in my early career days with very few women. I was working in the federal space and national security and critical infrastructure. There were very often not men there, and there were very few women like the women who you have the opportunity to meet with and hear from today that I could look up to and see a path. So for me these days, I use LinkedIn, and please feel free to connect with me as a platform to share a little bit about myself so that perhaps anyone can look to me or look to others like me and say, hey, I see the brand of leadership. I see the authentic leadership. I see a mother. I see a working executive. I see a cancer survivor. I see some piece of me. I see a pathway to the type of life that I would like to lead. And so sometimes social media can be used, I would say less to be influencer and more just to be able to shine a light on your authentic self, on your authentic leadership, on what's important to you so that others may feel like they are seen, like they are heard, and like they can see themselves in a future state of themselves in what you're presenting to the world.
I have to say that Bluma's LinkedIn posts they're brilliant. They're so warm. They're so real, they're so authentic, and they just speak volumes about the leader that she is. So if you aren't connected with her, you've got to find her on LinkedIn because those posts are just amazing. She's brilliant.
Said Sarah Patrick, brilliant, and one of my mentors as well. So this group, by the way, connect with everybody. Amazing group here.
Bluma, maybe digging into that, and also Holly asking you, there's also a wide range of professions in this room and in this industry, some very technical roles, some more sort of corporate traditional roles, lawyers and HR and things like that. How do you think about networking across those functions and regions to the extent that that's helpful as well?
I'll share a story in answering the question. We started a little bit with the importance of networking. But I guess over the years, you sort of develop this confidence to network. And it's hard. My boss always tells me, I'm good at it. I can do it. But it's really hard. You have to learn it. And I think the most important thing is you have to have the confidence to do it. I went to a conference with one of the lawyers on my team. It was a couple of years ago. It was NERC in DC. So there's over 1,000 people at these meetings. And she's probably listening on the phone, so I won't say her name to embarrass her. But we went out for a drink. We went to the opening reception or whatever, and saw a lot of people and talking to people, networking. And then we went out for a drink later, and she said, "I don't understand how you do it. How do you know all of these people?" And I told her, I don't know them. I'm faking it. I walk into a room with my whole self, and with this willingness to talk to people, and a willingness that I think they see and they feel, and then they approach me as much as I approach people. And that's how you do it. You don't have anything to hide. We're all here to learn from each other and to support each other. And I think when you get your mind around that point that we all need each other, it's a lot easier to build those relationships across our companies and in our industry.
I guess I'll take the question a little bit more literally because we are here at the ERO Women's Leadership Conference. And so that ERO includes all of the regional entities and NERC and the E-ISAC as part of NERC. And so for me, in my capacity leading stakeholder engagement, being able to work across all of the regions and all of the different offices and all of the different stakeholder communities is really integral to our ability to get the work done. I tell my teams over and over again, look at the projects that we think were the most successful. Were they the ones where you were working in a silo with just your team, with just one person, where when somebody said, get it done, you thought that meant just you? No, they were the projects where you worked across teams, where you worked across regions, where you brought people together, where you were inclusive and open-minded and took the superpowers of everybody at your disposal to get the job done. That is where we're successful. That is where we're whole. And as Jim would like to say, that is the beauty of the ERO model.
Absolutely. And Holly, as you sort of think about mentorship and networking, maybe in the context of the organization, specifically mentoring, what have you seen to be most effective? Sort of the formal mentoring programs or the sort of more loosely, relationships that happen over time?
So it's a great question because I don't know that there's a black and white answer to that. And some of the Slido responses sort of validated my beliefs on mentorship programs. I'm really lucky at SERC. We have been very deliberate over the last few years to stand up a mentorship program. We have an exceptional director of HR, and Jennifer Glinsky, a lot of you know her, she put a lot of time into this with her team. Formalizing a program, because without the formal program and structure, if you don't have the support of your company, it's probably not going to happen. But now that it's in place, the way that it works is employees can request a mentor and they can request the topic that they want to be mentored on. So Hilda, who's here, she requested, there she is, yeah. Hilda requested mentorship from me on leadership. So we go to lunch once a month and we have great conversations. I learn as much from Hilda, who is amazing, just finished a master's degree from University of London in finance. I mean, she's in a different world than I am, and we learn as much from each other, but it's so awesome that I can share some leadership lessons that I've learned. I don't know that I would have been able to do that without great mentors myself, which is something else that I'm very fortunate that my company supports. And there's one of our independent directors has been a mentor to me and has really taught me a lot about leadership and confidence and putting yourself out there and sort of controlling your own destiny. So I would say if you don't have a mentorship program in your companies, you should have one. You should take the time to stand one up and just make it a little bit formal so you have the structure there, but then have fun with it because it's really important and you can learn a lot from each other.
Great. Maybe one last question, and I'll ask everybody to touch on this a little bit, but I will start having the mic. The question is advice that you would give women who are entering the energy sector, who want to advance and grow their career. And maybe just one thing, because we've talked about it a lot today, is nobody does this alone. Frankly, it wouldn't be fun to do this alone. And so ask, talk to people. Everybody, I think we're all here because we want to help each other. And so I think it's really important to remember you can't do this alone. You shouldn't have to do this alone, and to ask people for help and mentorship.
So I would say when you're looking for mentors, you should actually have multiples. So you can have a peer mentor, somebody who is maybe 2 or 3 years ahead of you in the role. You might need a technical mentor. For those of us in this industry, it's a technically complex industry, and not all of us are engineers or have that background in operations. So for me, finding that engineer who can speak at a level that I could understand and interpret and apply was really important. And then there's this strategic mentor, and that's typically somebody who is further along in their career who can help with that guidance and advice on career advancement, because networking and mentorship aren't extras; they're career accelerators. So looking for multiple opportunities, and I would say don't dismiss the middle managers, because sometimes those folks have a lot of practical knowledge and experience and opportunities to share. And also don't be gender specific in who you seek out, because I will say that some of the best mentors that I have had in my career have been men.
Advice for women entering the profession. We've heard so much today. I kept writing and rewriting my notes because there were so many great nuggets, but I would say be yourself no matter what. It's important. Be authentic and stay curious. And most importantly, know you have choices. You can choose where you want to be and what you want to do. I think so often for women in this industry, especially, we are working in an area it's still predominantly male, the energy industry, more so than other sectors. And don't think you have to fit a mold, because you can't. I mean, it's not who you are. And we have so much to offer and so much value to bring. So do that, and just own that. Like, always own that. Don't lose your confidence over that.
Those are great comments. And I would just echo the sentiments about being authentically yourself. Don't let anybody tell you that you have to be like the next person. You are perfect and enough just the way you are. Oftentimes, we've seen people say things like, oh, you're going up for that job. Well, you've got some big shoes to fill there, right? Well, guess what? We bring our own shoes, and these shoes right here, they are leopard print, and they are strong, and they are fierce, and they are smart, and they can do the job in the way that the next guy or the next gal would do it differently, and that's okay. So really lean into your strengths, into your individuality, into your own personality, into your superpowers that make you uniquely you. You guys are all doing an amazing job just by being here. Is really a huge testament to taking that first step.
Fantastic. Michelle, do we have a minute for a question or yeah? There are any questions?
I do have some fun questions. So we can all first chance think about your questions. Okay, so the first question from Slido, going back to mentors, what makes a good mentor? What should I look for in a mentor, and how should I approach this? It's a lot in that question.
Well, I think what makes a good mentor, somebody you admire, somebody that, I actually just thought of a story years ago in a different role, a different company. I met a young intern, and I asked her what she wanted to do when she graduated from, actually it was law school, and she looked at me and she said, "I want your job." And I still work with her as a mentor. We still talk. We haven't worked in the same industry in 20 years, but looking for somebody who you admire, I think makes a really good mentor. They have a lot to share.
Okay, opening it up to the room again. Anyone before we go back to Slido? No, maybe you all are putting them in Slido. You don't want to speak
Michelle,
up.
I have
Yeah.
one thing. One thing I wanted to say. I wasn't sure how to fit this in, but sort of been working through my brain. Today's just been incredible. So energizing. Last night was incredible. Thank you, RF. This has been an amazing conference. But the one thing is, we're sitting here today. We're all talking about advice we can give women, and I can't help but think. I think maybe there's some advice we can give our male colleagues. Many of you in the room today, so thank you for being here, and many on the phone. Women are still 40% of the workplace in general, 25%, I think, thereabouts. I mean, I looked at a bunch of different numbers, so who knows what's right. But in the energy sector, that's pretty low. And we can do all of these things we've been talking about, but we really can't do it without the support of our male colleagues. And I was thinking, if there was some advice, we talk about advice to women, but what about advice to our male colleagues? What would we ask of them if we could? And so I'm going to do that today. So mentor and champion your females in your companies. I think it's maybe assumed, men will promote and champion people like them. And so maybe it's a deliberate, more conscious effort to do that for women in your companies. That's one. I would say, and this one's for Nikki, but for when you're sitting in a room and you hear mansplaining, stop it. Tell people to stop it. Because women don't need that. Women need credit for their ideas and for the things that they're doing. And so give it. The third is for men, I think, and women too, but make sure there are career paths to really advance people. And again, I think it has to be much more deliberate for men to create that for women sometimes. And by career paths, I mean criteria. Know what it takes to advance people, and make sure that it's measurable and not subjective, because I think that subjectivity still exists in our industry. And then we've talked a little bit about that. I don't want to use the word soft skills. I love the word human literacy we heard earlier, but I do think that's often taken for granted, those skills that women are good at, that we bring to the table. And don't take that for granted. It really is. Lisa had to leave, but I love that Lisa Barton said this is really a people-focused industry. It really is. And there's a lot of value we can add. So my call to action isn't really to the women necessarily, but it's to our male colleagues. Please help, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there for you too.
Okay, with that, any other questions? We'll wrap this up here. Seeing no hands, thank you so much.